Israel Adesanya is going to be taking on Nassourdine Imavov this Saturday in Saudi Arabia at a stacked fight night card. It's weird to see him the main event of a fight night, not a main event in a pay-per-view, a massive pay-per-view. Very weird to see, but I guess that this is going to be the new normal if Adesanya is not able to win against Nassourdine Imavov and eventually work his way back to the title. But today I'm going to be breaking down previous fights of theirs. Who do I think is going to win? Both of these guys, their game plans. Timestamps should be in the description, so everyone should be able to check it out if they just want to see a certain part. But getting straight into it, the most recent fight that either of these guys has had, Nassourdine Imavov versus Brendan Allen. Completely different style than Adesanya, but Allen, he was able to get the takedown and control him right away, which was kind of surprising. Brendan Allen has good entries, he's very good at controlling, and he has very good jiu-jitsu and submissions. Nassourdine Imavov, he does have kind of a takedown defense problem. His takedown offense is pretty solid. His defense, though, isn't great. We saw that in the first round. Allen could have definitely done more damage, I feel like, with the knees to the body towards the end of the round when Imavov was on the ground. I get why people don't like to throw them because it's easier to lose your position, but when there's 10 seconds left, you have nothing left to lose. They're super damaging shots. So I feel like that was a mistake by Brendan Allen to not get him even more tired. But Allen is a very underrated striker. He was landing some really good kicks on Imavov. I could see Adesanya doing that as well. Imavov, his initial takedown defense is great. We saw that in the second and third rounds of this fight. Imavov super fast. Brendan Allen kind of fought this fight like an idiot, especially in the second round, just laying on bottom when he could have, he could have tried scrambling up, and I don't believe Imavov would have submitted him. Again, very stupid. He kind of threw away the second round. I think that Imavov, one thing that's a little overrated is his power, because Brendan Allen is a very chinny guy. We've seen him get chinned by Chris Curtis, wobbled by a lot of other guys. He has good striking, but his chin is not great. The fact Imavov couldn't have even, not even just knocked him out, but wobbled him at any point is kind of insane, and it makes me doubt that he could knock out a guy with a good chin like Adesanya. Imavov does have an underrated chin, I will say, so I don't think Adesanya will be able to really knock him out either. But I think Imavov, his best weapons are straight shots. He's super fast. We've seen Adesanya get knocked down by Strickland with that straight right hand, which is Imavov's best weapon in my opinion. This fight, Brendan Allen, Imavov, completely different than Izzy's style. Izzy doesn't really brawl. He does sometimes, but not like in this fight. And he doesn't initiate grappling exchanges. Maybe he did in the Pereira first fight, but he usually doesn't, and I don't expect to see that in this fight. I think Imavov isn't going to want to brawl either because he does not have a good gas tank. His gas tank is very weird, where sometimes against Sean Strickland, he could go the full 5, and I think he even won the 5th round. But other fights, you see a 3-rounder, and he's completely dead at the end of the 3rd, just like in this fight. It was a crazy image. Both guys were completely gassed, and I get why the second round, mainly the 3rd round, was a super high pace. But it was almost just like a 2-round fight. Nothing happened in the first round. And it showed that Brendan Allen and Imavov, their gas tanks are some of their biggest issues. If they want to be a champion, they are going to have to fight 5 rounds, which they've done before. But in both of those fights, they've either lost or barely scraped by. Moving on to the next fight, Imavov versus Jared Cannonier. So this fight was pretty interesting. Again, a really bad stoppage at the end. Cannonier, he was landing some really good leg kicks, which Imavov doesn't really check that well. Adesanya doesn't really check leg kicks either that I've seen, I guess because both guys have kickboxed. They kind of are used to it, but that is a hole in both of their guys' game. Both of them don't really check leg kicks, which I think is going to be important because whoever can land the harder kicks, it's going to affect the movement more. Adesanya has very, very small calves, which that could be kind of a part of his demise in this fight. But Eventually, Imavov was able to counter the kicks with straight shots down the middle. He did this to Jared Cannonier in their fight, and as the fight progressed, he kept on doing it more and more and more. I think it's going to be a little bit harder to do that against a guy like Adesanya, who's a little bit more rangy. His legs are much longer. He's a bigger guy. He's a longer guy. It's going to be a lot harder, and I don't think Imavov is going to have much success doing this. He also won't have the advantage in the clinch like we've seen against a guy like Jared Cannonier, a much smaller opponent, against a Joaquin Buckley who he was able to take down. Against a guy like Adesanya, it's going to be much harder. Imavov, he ended round 2 very well in this fight, but I just think Izzy's going to be a little bit better at moving, and he won't really get walked down similar to the Strickland fight. I don't think that's really going to happen to either guy unless one kind of gasses out. Round 3, Imavov, he kept on countering the leg kick. Again, as the fight moved on, he just kept on doing it. And I thought Imavov was kind of up in this fight. I know a lot of people complain about the stoppage, which I get because it was a bad stoppage, and Imavov does not have good cardio, so he would have emptied the tank, and if he wasn't able to finish Cannonier, he could have been gassed in round 5, but it was a very close fight. I thought Imavov might have been up 2-1. I mean, the TKO was very early in the 4th, so we didn't really see that round play out. I think Jared Cannonier, he's very skilled, but I think Jared Cannonier, one thing about him is his power is definitely overrated. A lot of people talk about him as like a one-punch knockout guy because he has gotten knockouts like that. But he isn't like the hardest hitter at 185 like people were talking about him a few years ago. And you pair him with a guy like Imavov, who has a very good chin, he's just going to knock him out. And he also does have one of the worst chins in the division. Cannonier gets wobbled or knocked out, it seems like, in every one of his fights, except against Adesanya, who had a clean performance against him. I think Jared Cannonier definitely underperformed, but still, Imavov, I do think Imavov may be able to take him down. I think against Jared Cannonier, he was able to briefly take him down in the center, and if you're going to take down Adesanya, you're going to take him down in the center. I think Dricus du Plessis got hit with like a spinning back elbow in their fight. I would have liked, and it would have been cool to see Dricus try to time it and take him down off of that, because I guarantee you Adesanya would have been off balanced and he 100% would have gotten taken down. I don't know if he would have kept him down, but still, how this fight ended, Imavov, he landed the shot, and we got an early stoppage, which was unfortunate. I think Imavov would have gotten his hand raised regardless, and it probably would have been a TKO because of Cannonier's chin, even though he does have solid recovery. But regardless, moving on to the next fight, Imavov versus Dolidzie. So in this fight, this was a very bad, boring fight, horrendous fight. Dolidzie, I do think Dolidzie has improved since this fight, and his submissions are very good. He's super dangerous on the ground. But at this time, he wasn't really able to take down Imavov, especially against the fence. So he would just rack up a bunch of cage control. And I'm shocked they let him hold on as long as they did. And he just couldn't take him down. And Dolidzie just isn't a great striker. So Imavov was able to piece him up. He was much faster. Imavov, his cardio looked really good in this fight. Again, 5 rounds. Kind of a low-pace fight, though. And there was a few fouls. So there was a bunch of time off, a bunch of recovery compared to normal fights, which Imavov does have his fingers out in a lot of his fights, so we could see a few eye pokes in their upcoming bout. And I think this fight arguably should have been stopped in the first round, which shows how weird Imavov's cardio is, because he emptied the gas tank in the first round trying to get the finish, and it was like nothing happened. He was right back in the second round. So I don't think his gas tank is like horrendous, but I don't think it's great. He did land a head kick. I don't think it was the illegal one where Dolidze's hand was down, but I could see him landing that on Adesanya, who kind of has a Volk problem where he backs up when guys pressure him with long combinations with his chin up in the air, and he kind of tilts his head to one side. I could see Imavov landing a long combination, or at least pushing him back with it, and then landing the head kick and hurting him. I could definitely see that happening. But moving on to Imavov versus Chris Curtis, this was, I feel like, Imavov's best performance. He got the takedown early with ease, and I think Curtis, his takedown defense is a little overrated. I think it's more that his submission defense is kind of underrated, I would say. Brendan Allen got him in a lot of bad positions and couldn't choke him out. Imavov nearly finished Chris Curtis, and in the first round, I think it was, with a rear naked choke. It was almost locked in. It was close, but he didn't hide the hands super well, and Curtis was able to break out of it. Imavov was still winning on the feet. He still was doing good, and the headbutt kind of finished the fight, unfortunately. We did see Chris Curtis land some really good body shots, which Izzy was landing against DDP. I think that is going to be huge for a guy like Adesanya, who has improved boxing. We've seen his boxing improve drastically in the past year or so. And the last Imavov fight I'm going to be breaking down or just touching on is him versus Joaquin Buckley. Maybe his best win outside of Jared Cannonier. Just in this fight, we saw Imavov gas out bad in the third round. It was a high-paced fight, but still, he was dead in the third round, and he got hit with big shots in the third. His striking defense already isn't great, but when he gets tired, it just gets so much worse. Imavov did a good job in the first and second rounds. He won the round, outstruck him. He was significantly bigger and longer than Buckley, and he was able to outgrapple him, which is pretty impressive. And in the Imavov versus Sean Strickland fight, this is where I say he has really weird cardio, because he looks so tired, and then he comes back in the fifth round, and I believe he wins the round. Super weird. Imavov started off pretty good. He was landing shots on Sean Strickland, but Strickland sees the shots coming, so he kind of rolls with them just in time to take off just a little bit of the power so it doesn't knock him out. And on top of that, this was at light heavyweight. I believe it was a short notice fight at the beginning of 2023. I think Sean Strickland showed up on short notice, and Strickland already has a pretty good chin. So the fact that he didn't even have to cut weight, Imavov was never going to knock him out. This was always going to be a super bad matchup for Imavov. And we saw Imavov get taken down in this fight. I feel like he doesn't go enough to the body, and sometimes he just headhunts and uses front kicks, kind of like Sean Strickland. But with Strickland's defense, that's just not going to work if you don't go to the body. It just plays right into his game. I think Imavov should have also tried to mix in takedowns, just like how Sean Strickland did. I feel like Imavov now at 185 would do better in this fight. I think he lost 4 rounds to 1. I think he could, maybe take 2 rounds now or something. He probably still doesn't win, but I think he does pose a danger to Sean Strickland. And this was the first Sean Strickland fight where it seemed like he was actually throwing volume. Maybe because it was at 205 and he trusted his chin more, or he didn't respect the power of Imavov. But yeah, this was a fight where Imavov was just getting walked down, similar to Adesanya versus Sean Strickland. And speaking of Adesanya, getting into his fights, Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis. This was a very good fight. This was so much better than all of Adesanya's, for the most part, other fights outside of maybe the Kevin Gastelum fight. But even that one, it sucks because we saw Gastelum have no fight IQ. He's just a shit fighter. But DDP and Imavov, absolutely nothing alike. DDP likes to throw big hooks while Imavov is just straight shots, and Imavov doesn't really blitz in. He's also not as slow as DDP. He's much faster outside of the kicks. DDP has much faster kicks. Imavov, they're fast too, maybe not much faster, but his kicks are super underrated, especially with the lead leg. I think that he's also more physical. I think he's bigger. I don't know if he's as long, but he's definitely bigger. And I think his grappling is a little bit better than Imavov's, in my opinion. He also pushes the pace a little bit more, gets in your face a little bit more. It's a much harder fight for Adesanya, in my opinion. And Imavov is also not as powerful. In this fight, though, I will say Izzy's body work was insane. That was what was winning him the fight. I thought Adesanya definitely won the third, in my opinion. I don't know if he won the first. It's like one of the closest rounds I've ever seen. It's like round 2 against Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. It's a coin flip round. You could have said Izzy 2-1 going into the fourth, and he was winning the fourth up until the last minute. You could definitely have that argument. Body shots, body kicks, they were there all night. He was landing them the entire fight, and it led to DDP kind of gassing out a little bit. Again, Dricus, he will push like no other fighter on the roster. He will fight past exhaustion, which I don't know if I could count on Imavov to do that. Imavov, again, he's not as physical, so I don't see the takedowns working as well as they did, let's say, in like the second round of their fight. And I would imagine he'd want to save his energy for the 5 rounds, where Dricus is just, the moment the fight starts, he's just in your face. He's going for the finish at all times. Imavov doesn't really fight like that. He's not as entertaining. He's not as dangerous, I don't think, anywhere, to be honest, compared to Dricus du Plessis. In this fight, this is what made me notice that Izzy really backs away with his chin up in the air, and it did eventually cost him the fight. He's known as a counter striker, which I don't really agree with, and I don't think that's how he should try to win this fight. I think the way for him to win this fight is to be on the front foot like a Dricus du Plessis, like he was in this fight. They kept on switching, and when Adesanya was pushing the pace, taking the first step, he was winning the fight. Imavov, he had some trouble being on the back foot against Sean Strickland, just like Adesanya. I don't think either of these guys, if the other one is on the front foot, that they'll have as much trouble, but it definitely is possible. Front kicks to the body could also work in this fight to push the other back. They definitely made Dricus du Plessis tired, along with the body shots. The combinations to the body were absolutely insane. I think Adesanya has definitely fixed his boxing problem that he showed against Sean Strickland. Obviously, Strickland is better defensively than a du Plessis for striking, but regardless, it did look improved. His output looked really good in this fight. I like the spinning back elbow, but that could get him taken down against Imavov, so I don't know if I would throw it. And I would imagine that Izzy, his submission defense would have been improved, as that is his weakest area, and that is what kind of lost him his last fight, getting submitted at the end. His leg kicks were really good in this fight, but so were Dricus's. Izzy has good leg kicks, but other guys can land them too, especially a guy like Imavov, who has really good leg kicks. I think it's going to be somewhat easier to land the body shots against Imavov, since he's much taller than Dricus. He is quicker in the pocket, though, so I don't know how much success Izzy will have at countering, so that definitely could be interesting. Adesanya versus Sean Strickland, his worst performance, in my opinion. Strickland was much more patient and lower output in this fight compared to Imavov and their fight. This was one of the worst title fights of 2023, in my opinion. People only love it because of the upset factor, but the actual fight itself has absolutely no replay value. He's always had a boxing problem, but the forward pressure and combine it with Strickland being so defensively sound, it's just a horrible nightmare for Adesanya. And he didn't adjust at all during the entire fight, basically. Even when he was down 3-1, which again, this was not a 50-45 by Strickland. It was a 49-46. Izzy definitely did good in the second round. And he just had trouble finding his kicks, his jab. Stuff that he usually starts with. It's like kind of like Max Holloway, how he starts off with body shots, just the straight shots to the body, and then he builds up. And why he couldn't have much success against Topuria, because he wasn't able to build into the fight, and that's how Adesanya builds into the fight. He also got caught with a straight right hand, like I said earlier, when he was throwing a hook. If he does that, he's going to get dropped again. I don't think he will, but Imavov is super fast, arguably faster than Sean Strickland. And this is kind of worrying. I'm not going to lie if you're an Adesanya fan, but I think he'll be okay. He started to go to the body a few times in the second round and third round, and he did have success. He was landing the body kick, which Dricus was able to land and kind of win him the fight against Sean Strickland. I feel like if Adesanya would have went to the body more with his kicks and not up top, not the question mark kick, not the calf kick, just to the body, he would have had a lot more success. I even think that Adesanya was winning the third round. Barely. Again, neither guy was really landing anything until the very end when he got caught over swinging, I believe once or twice. I don't like how Izzy dips his head like he did in this fight. Again, I'm worried that Imavov could land the head kick. A little bit worried, but another area where I could see Imavov knocking him out that way, even though I don't think he has a ton of power, so I don't think that he will. Strickland was landing his jab a lot in this fight, which I believe Imavov will be landing early with his speed. And then towards the end of the fight, Adesanya, he's just not going first for the majority of the fifth round. And he loses the fight, and he just allowed himself to get walked down. Strickland obviously yelling in the last 10 seconds, just like he did against Paulo Costa, just like he did against Jack Hermanson. He's one of the most boring fighters on the roster until the last 10 seconds, and he just tries to hype up the crowd. But regardless, it was a shit fight. Moving on to the last fight, I'm going to be breaking down Adesanya versus Jared Cannonier. This was a horrible fight to watch. Again, it's tough watching both of these guys fight because neither is really entertaining. The only way you're going to get entertaining fights from these guys is if they fight Dricus du Plessis. They both have some entertaining fights, but for the majority, they're not super entertaining. Adesanya, he was just slightly out-kicking Jared Cannonier. Cannonier just had a very poor night. Because I've seen Cannonier. I know Cannonier is good. He just did not show up that night. He wasn't throwing anything. Adesanya, his jab was on point. He was landing it like crazy. Jared, he was landing back, but just not throwing any volume. He had a good round 3 where he landed some good shots, mixing up the clinch. He couldn't take him down, though, against the fence because you're not going to be able to take down Adesanya against the fence. He was able to land late as well, doing a similar thing that Dricus du Plessis did, pressuring Izzy back. And he was able to land a few big shots to end the fight. I think he won round, I forgot if it was 3 or I think it was 3. Arguably could have won round 4, I believe. I don't know if it was 4 or 5 that he could have won, but it was very close. I thought it was either 49-46 or 48-47 Adesanya. Izzy, his takedown defense, just too good. Cannonier, I think he could have done better if they would have done that fight, the rematch, compared to Sean Strickland. I don't know if he would have done as good as Sean Strickland, but I think he could have won the belt. I mean, Adesanya did not look good the night he fought Sean Strickland, similar to the night Jared Cannonier fought Adesanya. The game plans for this fight. So Imavov, he does have a slight defensive grappling problem where he gets controlled pretty easily. I don't see Izzy mixing up the grappling at all, so I don't think he has anything to worry about. That would be kind of cool to see if he did test it because Imavov is not going to be expecting any grappling from the other side. If Imavov, if he wants to take him down, he's going to have to take him down in the center when they clinch or in the moments where Izzy overcommits or he goes for something crazy like the spinning back elbow. But even still, Izzy has such good get-up ability. He's going to crawl to the fence. And for Imavov to have any real success or control time here, he's going to have to take the back very quickly, like Dricus du Plessis did, like he did against Chris Curtis. Takedown attempts, I think that they're only going to occur kind of early in the fight, second, third round because of cardio issues. And I think if Imavov sticks with straight shots, he's going to find a lot of success. I do think he's going to land. I think he'll land the front kick to the body. I think he'll land the leg kicks. And I think that Izzy does have improved boxing, but when bigger guys blitz in, like I've said a ton of times in this video, his chin, he does not have great striking defense like we saw against Alex Pereira. And I think that Imavov, if he kind of presses forward, puts the pressure and pushes him back, he could land something big against the fence, like the head kick. He has to pace himself, though, because this is a 5-round fight. He does have a cardio issue, which could hurt him if it's a close fight and it's 2-2 going into round 5. He's going to have to pace himself, which is why I think he's not really going to mix up the grappling. Adesanya, I think instead of using his energy on the question mark kicks, he needs to throw body kicks. I loved his combos against Dricus du Plessis to the body, We saw it kind of gas out Dricus, so I'm curious to see if it's going to gas out Imavov, which I think it probably will, especially against the taller opponent who has a much easier target to hit, has a longer torso, so it's going to be much easier to land body shots. Both guys are not their best on the back foot, so this is going to be who is going to take the lead, who's going to be throwing first, who's going to be on the front foot. I don't think either guy is going to be on the front foot for the majority of the fight. I think it's going to be like Dricus du Plessis in their fight where it's pretty even. Adesanya, he has to push the pace. Imavov, he's gone 5 rounds, but if it's a slow pace, he's going to have the cardio for it and he's not going to gas out. If Adesanya pushes the pace and has crazy volume, we've seen he's going to slow down pretty heavily. We saw that the body work really got to DDP, even though he's able to push through. I don't know if Imavov is going to be able to push through as well. And we saw in round 3, Adesanya Dricus du Plessis, we've seen the most volume from Adesanya in that 3rd round than we've seen in so many of his previous fights, like Sean Strickland, like Jared Cannonier, even like Alex Pereira, their fights. He was throwing crazy volume. He landed, I think, like 40 or just under 40 significant strikes, which is crazy. If he could keep that up from the 1st round, Imavov is going to be in real trouble. If he doesn't let Imavov even get started, that's going to ruin kind of Imavov's confidence. Like we saw in the Strickland fight, he's not going to be able to build. But neither guy, they check leg kicks. So I do think that this is really going to be who has more output. I think both guys are going to be landing really good shots everywhere. Not really in the clinch, but mainly leg kicks, body kicks, head kicks, probably head kicks to the arms, jabs, straight shots, hooks, just everything on the feet. It's just going to be who is going to have the more output, who is going to land the more damaging shots. I think Imavov isn't really going to be able to mix in the grappling as well. I don't think he's going to submit Adesanya. Both guys have good chins, so I don't really see either getting wobbled or anything. I think Adesanya has a slightly worse chin than Imavov, but slightly more power, in my opinion. I think with how much Izzy has improved his boxing against Dricus, who's not as fast, but still, I think that he doesn't have a boxing problem anymore, and I do think he is going to beat Imavov by a 48-47 decision because of his output, because of the later rounds, because of his experience. We could see Adesanya just go on a massive losing streak. He's already 1-3 in his last 4 against du Plessis, against Strickland, against Pereira, and winning against Pereira. This is, even though he's the favorite, it's a close fight. It's a risky pick because we've seen Izzy be low output most of his career, and Imavov is a very good striker, and I could see why someone would pick Imavov because that also is a pretty good pick. You could say, well, Adesanya, a lot of the guys that he's beaten, he's barely outstruck. He barely outstruck Cannonier. Marvin Vettori, even in that fight, he wasn't like a masterclass or anything, and Imavov was able to beat Jared Cannonier in more impressive fashion. So I could see where people are coming from, and Imavov can mix in the grappling. But I don't think he's going to be able to hurt Adesanya like he was against Cannonier. I think Adesanya arguably hits harder than Cannonier, and I think his cardio is going to hold up, and I think that he is going to be a much more improved version of himself from when he fought guys like Jared Cannonier. I think him against Dricus was the best I've ever seen Adesanya, even though he lost. But I'm going to go with Izzy by a close decision, classic Izzy fashion in my opinion. I think it'll be an okay fight. It's not going to be as good as either of these guys' last fight, but that's who I'm going with. Let me know who you guys think is going to win this fight, Adesanya or Imavov, and how you think that they're going to win it. But that is it for me. And yeah.